So Charlene, what made you want to do this video?
Well, I have the audacity to think that because people, when they discover that I've written a book with a gay guy, they'll come looking for me. And I made a promise to Marianne Williamson through something that I joined called Team Marianne. If I garner some people who are curious about me, I really wanted to have an opportunity to put a plug in for my dear Marianne Williamson. She's running for the presidency. And when I found out she was running for the presidency, my first reaction was, wow, wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Then I thought, but she hasn't got a chance in hell. So out of my love for her and all of what her books have meant to me, I decided I should listen to her announcement, because in the same day I got 2 links from 2 different people. And God has a way of doing things to impress me. When it comes in 2s or 3s, I know that I'm supposed to pay attention. So I thought, I better look at this. And besides, like I said, I loved her, and I've always loved what she had to say. But I kept thinking, she doesn't have a chance in hell. But I thought, I'll watch anyhow. And about 3 minutes into it, I got so excited. I sat on the edge of my chair. And I realized, I know somewhere in the Bible we are promised 1,000 years of peace. And anybody who reads the papers today, you know we're not anywhere near that. But there has to be a tipping point someplace where that's going to turn around. And because I've always believed that promise. And I thought, I have lived to see the day that this might actually happen. And I am so thrilled about that. But as I heard her, and I heard the incredible power with which she spoke, and as you know, this was all back in early April, and by now she has just really came right up through those necessary things without a hitch. We've all been there for her, and I saw just recently that she sold over 3 million books. So that means there's 3 million people somewhere interested in turning this thing around from hate to love. And at about the same time that Marianne, I found out that she was running for the presidency, I was just walking through the living room, happened to glance at the TV. I never caught, it was either a congressman or a senator, but I'll never forget, he looked right at the camera. And he said, you cannot fight hate with hate. I don't know what his next words were, but love was in it. I think he said something like, there is a certain point where you have to get back to love, something like that. I stood there, I could not believe that a congressman or a senator would even talk in a vein like that. And then, when I saw that Marianne was running for the presidency, and I thought about the 3 million people who had written her books, I thought there's probably 3 million people out there who are really wanting this thing to turn around. And the more she comes up through that hurricane of what you have to do to get there, I thought she is sliding up there so easily, and with the help of many people, I thought this could be really, really important. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that here in my workshop is I was interviewed in Indiana one time, and for something else, I don't remember what it was. Oh, it was to do with my work. And so the man from the newspaper, he said, I would like to do this interview in your workplace. Here I cleaned the house up because I thought, well, we'll sit in the living room. It was pretty. At that point, my workspace was in the basement. I said, well, there'll be pipes behind me. He says, I can block those out. He says, not a problem. But I've always remembered it because he says, you know, your workplace is sacred. And I thought that is so true, because you get into present moment business, and when you're in the present moment, you're probably closer to God than you are any other time. And so that's why I drug you up here and planted you here.
Well, speaking of your workspace, you're a best-selling author and a talented artist. What led you to write a book named Granny and the Gay Guy?
There's an incredible story behind that. Where do I start? I'll tell you how I met Jim. I had gone to Al-Anon because I was raised in an alcoholic home, and I felt it was affecting me as an older person, you know. And when I went to Al-Anon, I found that the presence of God was there in such a special way. I saw people sobbing, asking forgiveness, and opening up and trusting the higher power, and it was so incredible. And it made such a difference in my own life, because I felt conflicted on the inside, because it was not a religious thing. And here was God just responding to the name of higher power. Nobody cared really what it was called, as long as it was called upon. And so I said to I had gone to a week-long Al-Anon seminar, and they had like a chaplain, and I had a special time with him, and I said, I feel so conflicted, so agitated here. And he said, Charlene, don't see it as something that's troubling. See it as growth. He said, you're being asked to examine your beliefs and whether or not they hold for you anymore. And so because of that, I had looked for a church that answered that need. And as part of this church, it was open to the gay people. And so there was another thing I had to deal with. How was I going to refer to gay people from now on? And I was able to love them just as much as anybody else. And there was one man in the congregation, a young man, young enough to be my son. But we had so much fun together. We laughed and carried on. And I said, Jim, we've got to email, because he was a flight attendant. And I knew that he had hilarious things to say. So we started emailing. And as the emailing progressed, I said, why don't we put this in a book so the whole world can enjoy it? And he says, you're kidding. I said, no, I know how to do it. So we began to work on that. And then one day, prior to this, my other book that I had written, which is called The Joy of Six, and many people, I was in Borders and over the BA system. It said we had Charlene Potterbaum in here in her book The Joy of, well, it didn't come out six. It sounded just like sex, and I thought, oh wow. Through the big doors came a guy with he had earrings and tattoos and big fluffy pants and all of that, and he threw down $10 and he said, make it out to Heather. I said, okay, and I thought, boy, is Heather going to be surprised. But it's a story of how much fun we had raising the kids and so forth. So that book came out, and this was right at the time that I was learning. No, wait, I have to back up. At on 911, when everybody's hearts were breaking, and of course, we happened to have the mother. She was our girlhood friend as we were growing up, and her daughter, I think it was Kathy Nakosha, I think was her name, was one of the flight attendants, and she came down with the towers. And of course, everybody was just heartbroken. So they had a memorial for her in Kalamazoo, which wound up being her hometown. And while there, a flight attendant happened to be standing in line with me as we were waiting to say, extend our sympathies. And so it was a long line, so we had quite a talk. And he was so interesting, and he was just very pleasant to talk with. On the way home, I said to my sister, I said, I just really loved that guy I was in line with. I said, he was so pleasant. And I said, I wish he was my next door neighbor. Yeah, I said, I think we'd have a great time. So then my book came out a couple of years later, probably 3 years later, and at the church they had a book signing for me. So by then Jim and I had discussed, and I think we had even started emailing back and forth with the idea of turning it into a book. But he bought a book and he took off. He and his mother were going to Florida. And 2 weeks later, when he came back, he was standing there at the higher level of the stairs. Hurry up, get up here, Charlene, hurry. I said, what's up? He said, I can't wait, I've got to tell you something. I said, what is that? Because in my book, I had told about the episode of being in Kalamazoo. And he said, Charlene, remember the air flight attendant you talked to? And I said, yeah. He said, that was me. I almost fell back down the stairs. But I said, but you didn't look like you. And he said, well, I had a great big mustache. He said, it covered half my face. So anyhow, that was a great discovery for us, because we thought that was a set-up plan, And so that's how I met Jim, and that's how we happened to write the book. Some really incredible things happening when we were at book signings. And I remember one book signing in particular. He had gone down to talk, we were in his hometown, and he'd gone down to talk to some people at the other end of the table. And a friend of mine came along, because his hometown was just outside of our hometown, and she came along, she got so excited when she saw me, and she knew I was signing books, and she knew I'd written books. And she leaned down and she saw the title, Granny and the Gay Guy, and I kid you not, she backed off and she paled, and she says, I'll see you later. And I wanted to say to her, oh honey, say hello to your third husband for me, but I didn't. But anyhow, I lost friends, I lost some work, but I didn't care because I knew I was doing what God wanted me to do. And that book has made a difference in the lives of many people. I won't go into it now, but great and wonderful things. But I think I'm a good writer. Jim's a good writer. I think my books are good, but I do not know marketing, and I don't know the computer well enough to do it on the computer. So I don't care how good your book is. If nobody knows it's out there, it won't sell. But I'd like to let people know it is out there.
And another of your books with an interesting title, how did you come to write Fried Blue Potatoes?
Oh, that was interesting. I can't even remember what it was. It was some kind of a contest, not a contest, but maybe a schooling thing that I was doing on the computer. And they said, we want to prove it to you that you can write a book in a week if you make up your mind to. Well, if you write an ebook, it doesn't necessarily have to be 90 pages or more like a regular book. But he said, just get going and see what you can do. So I had always wanted to write a book called Fried Blue Potatoes because my mom wasn't much of a cook, and her potatoes always had that blue tinge to them. And at that time, I think the book Fried Green Tomatoes was out. And so I told my sister, I said, I always wanted to do a take on that because Mom's potatoes were always kind of blue tinged. She laughed. So I thought, well, this is my opportunity. So I did it. But in that book, I wish everybody would buy it. It'll cost you $1. I tried to get it for free for the month of June, but I couldn't pull it off. So Amazon doesn't work that way. So it'll only cost you $1. But in that book, I've got many of the testimonials and interviews with gay people, and I wish the whole world could read that. I simply wrote out what they had to say, and it's heartbreaking, and I would love it if people would read that, because it would do away with a lot of bigotry, so that would be wonderful.
Let's end the piece with a few words about what you would say to voters who might be open to Marianne Williamson's ideas.
I would say, well, any voter, whether you are, and I want you to understand, within the Democratic Party, there are some mean Democrats, but there are some mighty good ones too. And within the Republican Party, there are good people and there are bad people. And I said, what Marianne wants to do is she's wanting us to take responsibility for where we are today. Only she can say it in the right way. I would fumble all around if I tried to put it that way. That's why I would really encourage everybody to hear what she has to say, and to hear and sense and experience the incredible power behind what she says. It makes you want more. That's the first time in my life that I ever could listen to a politician and not fall asleep. I mean, I've really tried to be a good citizen down through the years, but I get so bored with what they had to say. So many promises that didn't have a feeling of stability behind it, and we are in such a bad time now. It's whether it is I'm not sure that might not have been Tim Ryan, because he leans the same way that Marianne does. But when he said you can't fight hate with hate, you just stir up more hate, So we have to do something, because this is not good for our children. I worry. By the way, I had 6 children, and they have 6 mates, and then they produced 23 grandchildren, and now I have 24 great-grands and 1 great-great-grand. I said, give us another decade or 2 and we'll take over the world. But I worry about them, because I think it's just progressively, every year, bullying is greater. And I know it sounds crazy, but if you have any interest in quantum physics, you'll find out that the negativity that's out there and all the vibrations that are swirling around are responsible for the weather. And actually, in that axiom about a butterfly waves his wings in California and they have a hurricane in China or something like that. But it's so true. We are so affected by invisible forces that we can't see. And I can see that it's just building up a negativity, but love is still stronger than all that fear and is more powerful than any negativity we could ever come up with. So, if you're tired with the way your life's going, and if you're ready for a change, I think we all need to knuckle in, not worry about denominations, church going, or anything, but look into the possibility of simply looking at life differently, thinking different thoughts, learning to do away with the whining and the bitching and all the horrible stuff that goes with it, and go to that innermost part of yourself where good resides, and that's where divinity lives, and it's on the inside of each and every one of us. And so sometimes we lose sight of that too. We think it has to be a denomination or a certain church or a certain group. So all in all, I think the country is ready to, it's going to be a gentle swing around in the other direction, and it's time. It's time. I guess that's what I wanted to say. The time is now. I think that's what I want to say.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We need more people like you, Charlene. Say good night, Mrs. Potterbaum.
Good night.